Welcome, travelers, to Adventures in Security. In this video, we explore cyberterrorism and how to defend against it. You can download the video script from the link below. Today, we're tackling cyberterrorism, a term people use a lot but often loosely. In this video, we'll build a clean, classroom-ready definition, compare cyberterrorism to things like cybercrime and hacktivism, and then apply a simple risk lens you can use to evaluate real incidents. Finally, we'll translate all of that into defense, the controls, habits, and response steps that reduce the chance of a high-impact attack and limit damage if one happens. As we go, remember, the core of terrorism is coercion through fear. In cyberspace, that often means disrupting essential services, undermining trust, or threatening safety, not just causing inconvenience. We'll stay focused on defensive, responsible cybersecurity, understanding threats so we can prevent harm. Here's our roadmap. First, we'll define cyberterrorism using criteria you can actually apply. Actor intent, political or ideological objectives, and level of harm or fear generated. Next, we'll unpack motives, because motives explain targeting decisions. Then we'll answer a practical question. Why would they pick this organization? That's where you'll see critical infrastructure, symbolism, and soft spot security gaps come together. Finally, we'll shift from threat to action. We'll use widely adopted guidance, like the NIST Cybersecurity Framework 2.0 and NIST Incident Response Guidance, plus prioritize baselines like CISA's cybersecurity performance goals to outline a realistic defense plan. By the end, you should be able to look at a scenario and say, is this cyberterrorism? If yes, what would the attacker want? Why this target? And what controls reduce risk most? A widely cited definition comes from Dorothy Denning. Cyberterrorism is unlawful attacks or threats against computers and networks done to intimidate or coerce a government or its people for political or social objectives. And to qualify, the attack should cause violence or at least enough harm to generate fear. Two takeaways. First, intent matters. A random criminal stealing credit cards isn't doing terrorism, even if the method is cyber. Second, impact matters. Denning draws a line between truly harmful attacks and costly nuisances. Also note, there's no universally accepted definition across countries or laws, so many courses use a narrow definition for clarity. Cyber-dependent attacks pursuing political objectives and aiming to provoke fear or coercion. So for this lecture, cyberterrorism equals political/ideological coercion, plus cyber means plus high-consequence impact or credible threats of it. Let's sort the lookalikes, because this is where confusion happens. Cybercrime is typically financially motivated: fraud, theft, extortion. Hacktivism blends hacking with political activism. It may disrupt or embarrass, but usually aims below the threshold of mass fear or physical harm. Cyber warfare is generally discussed as state-on-state conflict, where the big question is whether a cyber attack counts as a use of force or an armed attack. Ask two questions. Why did they do it? Money, protest, coercion, military advantage. What level of harm did it cause or credibly threaten? Same technique, like DDoS or malware, can fall into different categories depending on intent and impact. So classification is about context, not just the tool. Motives are the engine of cyberterrorism. Denning highlights intimidation/coercion for political or social objectives. Building on that, think of 5 motive buckets. 1. Coercion. Pressure governments or institutions to change behavior. 2. Fear. Show the public that systems can't protect them, especially if essential services fail. 3. Attention. Terrorism seeks an audience. Cyberspace can generate fast, high-visibility disruption. 4. Retaliation/provocation. Punish an enemy or bait them into heavy-handed responses that create more sympathy for the attacker's cause. 5. Resourcing. While pure cyberterrorism is about coercion, terrorist groups can also use the internet for propaganda, recruitment, and financing. Activities that may accompany, enable, or substitute for destructive attacks. The key: cyber-terrorist motives are less about profit and more about psychological and political effects. Important point: a lot of real-world terrorist use of technology is supportive rather than spectacular cyber attacks. UNODC describes ICT being used to promote and facilitate terrorism, propaganda, recruitment, financing, training, planning, and sometimes cyber attacks. A classic U.S. Institute of Peace report also warns that media and policymakers sometimes overfocus on dramatic cyber terrorism, while underestimating the everyday value terrorists get from online presence and influence activities. Now, what's changing? Reports from UN counterterrorism partners highlight the growth of cybercrime as a service, meaning tools and services can be purchased rather than built. That challenges the old assumption that advanced cyber capabilities are always out of reach. So even if high-end cyberterrorism remains rare, organizations should assume that access to disruptive capability is becoming easier, especially for targeting soft, under-defended environments. Targets are chosen for effect, not just vulnerability. Organizations become attractive when they matter to daily life. In the U.S., CISA identifies 16 critical infrastructure sectors, assets so vital that their incapacitation could have debilitating national security, economic, or public safety effects. They generate psychological impact. Hospitals, emergency services, transportation, water, and elections-adjacent services create public fear quickly when disrupted because people feel the stakes. They have leverage points. Interconnected systems create cascade risk. Disrupting one service can ripple into others. They look easy enough. Attackers often prefer targets with visible weaknesses, poor authentication practices, weak segmentation, limited monitoring, or vendors with excessive access. A practical takeaway: targeting is usually the overlap of high consequence and achievable disruption. Your job in defense is to shrink that overlap, raise the difficulty, reduce blast radius, and improve recovery speed. Let's apply what we've learned with a simple classroom lens. Think of it like a mini threat model. Step 1. Objective. What would coercion look like here? For example, forcing a city to reverse a policy, or undermining trust in public safety. Step 2. Fear/harm pathway. How would fear be created? Not how to hack, but what outcome? Shutting down emergency communications, disrupting water treatment visibility, or causing repeated outages that make people feel unsafe. Step 3. Dependencies. What must keep working for the organization to deliver service? Identity systems, remote access, vendor connections, OT networks, backups, call centers, cloud services, these are often the real choke points. Step 4. Break the pathway. Choose controls that either prevent compromise, limit spread, or speed recovery. This is the application skill. You're not memorizing attack names. You're practicing how to connect motive to target to consequence to defense. At a high level, cyber-terrorism-style operations cluster around disruption and fear. Disruption can be direct, overwhelming services, or indirect, breaking internal systems so the organization can't operate. A major modern risk is extortion that becomes terror-like. Ransomware or destructive malware that cripples hospitals, cities, or utilities. Even when money is involved, the social impact can be fear and instability. Guidance like the joint hashtag Stop Ransomware Materials emphasize preparation and response checklists because these attacks can quickly become operational crises. Integrity attacks matter too. Tampering with data, alarming dashboards, or public messaging can cause confusion and loss of trust, even without total shutdown. And if an organization runs operational technology, systems that interact with the physical world, security has to account for reliability and safety constraints. NIST's OT security guidance emphasizes that OT systems have unique performance and safety requirements. So, focus on outcomes, disruption, fear, and loss of trust, rather than the coolness of the technique. To prevent cyber-terrorist-style impacts, you need a management structure, not just tools. The NIST Cybersecurity Framework 2.0 is popular because it's outcome-focused and adaptable across sectors and sizes. Notice the first function. Govern. That's a signal that leadership, accountability, and risk decisions are part of cybersecurity, not extra paperwork. In practice, this means who owns cyber risk, how priorities get funded, how vendors are managed, and what consequences the organization is designed to withstand. Then you move through identify and protect, asset inventory, identity controls, secure configuration, into detect and respond, logging, monitoring, playbooks, ending with recover, backups, restoration, and lessons learned. The key phrase is, security is a life cycle. Cyberterrorism seeks disruptive society-level consequences, so defense must include resilience and recovery as first-class goals. If NIST-CSF is the organizing framework, CISA's Cybersecurity Performance Goals, or CPG, are a practical baseline, core protections that meaningfully reduce likelihood and impact of known risks. What's useful about CPG 2.0 is that it aims to be measurable and prioritizes what helps most across many sectors, including both IT and OT contexts. In other words, it answers, if you can only do a limited number of things this year, what's the best risk reduction per dollar and effort? Let's translate CPG thinking into 4 essentials. Strong identity, MFA, least privilege. Hardened systems, patching, secure configs. Visibility, logging, monitoring, asset awareness. Resilience, backups, tested recovery, response plans. Use CPGs as your minimum bar, then build maturity with your CSF profile and sector-specific requirements. Operational technology, or OT, defense is different because mistakes can affect physical processes. NIST's OT Security Guide highlights that OT systems have unique performance, reliability, and safety requirements, and recommends security countermeasures tailored to those realities. Practically, OT defense often starts with network segmentation. Keep business IT issues from spreading into control networks. Next is remote access discipline, because vendor and maintenance connections are frequent pathways into sensitive environments. Monitoring also looks different. In OT, you often care about anomalous behavior and unsafe states more than traditional endpoint signals. And patching can't always be immediate due to uptime needs, so you use compensating controls, restrict access, harden configurations, and increase detection until you can patch safely. The big takeaway. For critical services, defense is about preventing unsafe outcomes and recovering safely, not just restoring servers quickly. Your incident plan should explicitly include safety checks and operational validation before systems return to normal. Even strong controls can't guarantee zero incidents, so resilience is part of defense. NIST's updated incident response guidance emphasizes integrating response throughout risk management and improving detection, response, and recovery effectiveness. In lecture terms, I teach response as roles, rehearsals, and restoration. Roles. Who can shut down systems? Who talks to the public? Who approves restoring from backups? Rehearsals. tabletop exercises so people don't improvise in a crisis. Restoration. Backups are only real if you can restore quickly and correctly. For ransomware and extortion scenarios, the joint hashtag Stop Ransomware Guide provides prevention best practices and a response checklist you can adapt into your plan. Finally, don't do this alone. Sector partnerships, incident reporting channels, and law enforcement coordination can improve recovery and help others avoid the same attack pattern. Cyberterrorism isn't any scary hack. The distinguishing features are political or ideological coercion and a goal of creating fear through high-consequence disruption. Organizations become targets when they combine high societal impact, especially critical services, with weaknesses that make disruption achievable. So your defensive strategy is to build governance and accountability, implement prioritized baseline controls, and invest in response and recovery so disruption doesn't become catastrophe. That's it for this video. If you learned anything, please remember to give us a thumbs up and subscribe. And until next time, be careful what you click.